Hey everyone. So we're starting our very last unit of the school year. It's going to be Unit 8, and it's going to be one where we move beyond stuff that has happened in the past, but start to make connections to what is going on in the present. So in Unit 6 and 7, we studied two of the most major national crises that our nation has ever faced, the Great Depression and World War II. Right now, our country's undergoing this pandemic crisis with COVID 19. So, we're going to look at that crisis from the same lens of how we studied the Great Depression and World War II. So, if you look at your screen, you can see that the essential questions are going to be the same. They were purposefully structured this way so that we could study the Great Depression and then World War II, answering these questions so you can see how it worked and how they applied for when we get to now, that you can apply the same questions and learning to exactly what we're going through now. Thinking about where did this crisis come from with question one? What is the effect of this crisis on the country? Next up, how did the government respond to the crisis? Number four, how did people have differing perspectives on the government's response? Number five, how did the United States start to change because of this crisis? And lastly, was the government's response appropriate to the crisis? All right, so you already have some experience with these questions from our work before. Now you're just applying it to where we are actually with what you are living through right now, which is really one of these generational moments that is probably going to come to define Gen Z in the same way 9/11 came to define millennials like myself. All right, so moving forward, oops, that didn't work. Moving forward, in terms of the assessments look very similar to what they've looked like the past two units. Axes paragraph with that same essential question number 6, same thing going on. And then the source analysis assessment, same process as well. The one difference this time is that you need to do the source analysis first. There's a requirement that you're not just analyzing one source and kind of corroborating with another, but you're going to analyze both sources and corroborate them. One of those sources has to be a primary source, one of them has to be a secondary source. All right. And the change that comes with the axes paragraph from that is that these sources that you analyze in depth through the source analysis will be the evidence you use and integrate into your axes paragraph. So essentially, I'm not giving you the sources. You are finding the sources for yourselves about COVID 19 and the government's response online. You are analyzing them and applying our skills, and then using the information that you gather from these two sources to answer the sixth essential question about whether the government's response was appropriate to the crisis. All right, so going over the directions for our first lesson. The first lesson is just to ease you in and to remind you of how these essential questions that you're looking at again in our very final unit connect back to the previous ones. So the essential questions involved are numbers 1 through 5. You're actually directly answering them today. So up to this part, you've only really had to directly answer number 6. Now for each unit, you're going to be answering very quickly 1 through 5 side by side so you can see how they work with each other. The main skill we're dealing with today is contextualization. So what you need to see is what was the context during the Great Depression, during World War II, and then what's going on now. These essential questions build up those broad trends and seeing what people's perspectives are on the bigger picture so that when you go into later depth with looking at specific documents that you are going to be finding on your own, that you understand the big picture and how they fit into it, kind of like a puzzle. Our key concepts for today, just tied to what the content is. The United States has faced many crises, if I can say that word, across its history. We've studied two of them already. Where we are right now is another. So having a crisis is nothing new. And similarly, Americans have faced similar economic, political, and social challenges during any crisis. Those challenges are there, but those challenges will be specific and different to each new crisis as well. So what I'm kind of setting up is that when you compare and contrast things, comparison is what is similar, contrasting is what is different. So when you're looking at these different crises today, you're taking that into account. How is each of them unique in order to discover how they're similar and different to each other? So let's go ahead and look at Google Classroom so you know where your work is. So Unit 8, Facing the COVID-19 Crisis. I've got this learning guide here posted for you again. Remember, the learning guide sets up what the pacing is for your work for this unit. So you can see essential questions are the same. For Monday and Tuesday, I suggest this is when you work on the lesson I'm going over now. Lesson number 2 is actually something that we're going to do together at the video conference on Wednesday. So that's the day for that. Notice the lesson number 3 is really just your source analysis assessment. I am giving you Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, 6 days to get that done. Please get that done. It's a little bit expanded this time as well, so I wanted to give you more time for that, because what's going to happen is, again, you have to use the documents you get from this assessment as the evidence in your axes paragraph. So the day after we're done with this, you'll have a day to prepare for writing, and then the last part of our class is really just you writing that final axes paragraph. Notice I gave you 3 days to get it done here. Do Friday, May 29th. What that gives me is the weekend to grade them and to get them back to you on Monday, June 1st, so that if you need to revise anything, you have our last 3 days of school to get that done, because then we're done on June 3rd. So you need to have this stuff done, because if you don't, guess whose fault that is? Hint, it's you. Okay, so that's our pacing. Supplemental leaks, just stuff that's always been there before. Office hours, which no one ever uses. Rubrics, which maybe you use. And turnitin.com, which I hope you're using, because remember, until you submit your required assessments to there, I will not grade them. I only grade them through turnitin.com. All right, so back to Google Classroom. So the work that you're doing today, set up right here, should have been shared to you with a copy for everyone. Gives just a little bit of directions at the top to explain the reasoning for what you're doing. And what you've got here on the left is the first 5 essential questions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What you've got along the columns are Unit 6, Unit 7, and where we are in Unit 8. If you look at the directions, what you're doing is you're going to type into each of these boxes a very simple, straightforward answer to the questions for Unit 6, Unit 7, Unit 6, Unit 7. And I'm giving you hints along the way. So where could you find answers to the multiple factors that caused the Great Depression? That comes from Unit 6, Lesson 1. So I'm telling you where to find the answers for what we've done so far. If you've done all the assignments along the way, this is essentially just a review of our learning. And then we get to right here. So this is answering these questions just from kind of a blind mindset for the unit to come. Now, for this information, you're going to kind of have to rely on your experiences during your quarantine and what you've learned from current events if you follow the news. The other option is you could always talk to your parents about this stuff. Chances are they know a little bit more about it than you do, especially if you don't watch the news. So you're welcome to get their help on this, but what you're going to get is a pretty good chart that has our major questions that we have been studying since the beginning of April to see how they worked out in the Great Depression, how they played out in World War II, and how they are currently playing out right now. This is going to provide you a pretty good context for moving forward with eventually finding your own documents that deal with these topics that you have more or less summarized right here. All right, so let's wrap up. So remember, you're dealing with the first 5 essential questions, all of them today, because you're directly answering them. You are creating a context of where we are right now in the COVID-19 crisis by comparing it to past crises of the Great Depression and World War II, which we've already studied, to understand how in any crisis, Americans will face similar challenges, but the challenges will be a little bit different each time as well. All right, folks, that's it. You will see me next time for the directions on lesson number 2. So until then, bye-bye.